Hello, everyone. I am Vishal Krishna, and I am the host of the Upstream Life podcast. Today's guest is Amit Kumar Agarwal, the CEO and co founder of No Broker. It's a one stop shop for all property related needs. For those of you who haven't tried it, check it out. It is India's largest real estate platform that allows users to rent, buy, and sell that they've saved over rupees 5,000 crores of brokerage. And it's a direct benefit to users of the No Broker app. No Broker was started because the founders believed that paying hefty brokerage cannot be the only option to find a new home. In the past, and if you were tenants, you'd know, you were paying these brokerages year on year without seeing any advantage of the broker. The only reason the broker existed was that there was a huge information asymmetry in the market. So No Broker as a platform removes this information asymmetry, and provides a marketplace where property owners can directly interact with property seekers for free. It is for free. And it's a process that used to cost 1 to 2 months of rent or 3 to 4% of property value as brokerage. All that's changed now with No Broker. By the way, I'll tell you why I like No Broker, because their entrepreneurial story is like no others. They have really waited, worked hard. It's a 7-8 year journey. And that journey is something that you're going to hear. And Amit is going to tell you about it. Amit is an alumnus of IMA and IIT Kanpur. And he started his career with Cognizant and has worked in PwC and ANZ Bank. Amit, that's quite a resume you have. But before we get on with it, I have to talk about my sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Bonamia Coffee, the very best gourmet coffee that allows you to be your own barista. Bonamia's coffee is a great way to kickstart your meetings and helps you through the busy work week. Amit, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, Vishal.
No, I mean, it's a pleasure that you're here because you've supported me in my previous journey, my other channel that I was at. And this is a new start for me and new beginnings and talking about transformation, right? I'm going through transformation yourself. And No Broker is an app that transforms real estate, or it tells people that you don't have to pay brokerage when you're seeking a home. But tell me about it. Is it really a super app full of services? It's like I consider it a full stack of property services. It's been around for a while. It was a long, hard journey for you. There were several phases to it. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think when we started with the core philosophy that why should we pay such a high brokerage? So it was a very, I would say, a middle class common man problem that today in today's world, when I can send a Facebook request to anybody in the world, to Brad Pitt for all you say, then why is it so that I can't basically connect with the owner who wants to rent out his property, say in Koramangala, 2 BHK and so on. So the initial hypothesis and the philosophy was that earlier the reaction of people was that it hasn't been done anywhere else in the world at this scale. So how will it be done in India? And there was no Amazon equivalent or Uber equivalent in US or China. And I think over years, what we realized was that the moment you break away from broker, then you get this amazing freedom of interacting directly with owner and tenant and buyer and seller, which opens up huge amount of possibility to make it a super app. So it has happened more organically and more on customer demand rather than some artificial philosophy of ours. So now we realize that because those genuine owners and tenants are there, and because the entire industry of packer mover of painting cleaning is so unorganized, so gradually we basically started providing those services with our partner, and now it has become a super app with host of services.
Okay, that's about you. But I want to know, how did the founders get together? I want to know, what is the common vision that, 7 years or 8 years is a long time of staying together and it's beautiful. How did that happen? You want to talk about the initial story of creating this company? If you remember, at that point of time, there were so many companies that when the classified side that were raising money, right? Without any underlying technology as such. They were just websites, right? And you guys were categorized in that pool too. And it was very difficult to say that we are different. Talk about the founders meeting, the principles that you got together on, and what were some of the first principles that you built this company upon?
Sure. So the basic fundamentals that we built the company upon was our own experiences dealing with brokers. So I think that was a start. We three, me, Akhil, and Saurabh, we had shifted many cities. We dealt with many brokers. Me being in management consulting, I had shifted cities, lived in different cities. And we found that the broker is more interested in making sure that he gets the money. He doesn't care whether you get the best house or not, or whether you get the best deal or not. And because there is no entry barriers, a lot of people are there for quick buck and so on. The initial challenge, which you rightly pointed out, and you have seen our journey, is that the reaction that we faced from everybody was that this has never been done before. Secondly, there are already so good and well funded companies in the industry. Yes, they might be working with a broker, they might have just a classified portal, but they are well funded. And if this idea was good, then why haven't they done it? And if the idea is really good, why can't they do it in future? So how do you answer this question, right? If there is an opportunity, there's opportunity. How can you predict whether how the ecosystem will react? So I think the initial challenges were these. Our core assumptions and our core beliefs was, one, that we need to do what is best for customer. Second, we can't control competition. So of course, it is true that the other players were very well funded, but there's nothing that we can do. We can only cook. We can basically only make sure that we do our job well, and then we basically leave it to the customer and to some extent to some bit of luck. So I remember that in the initial years when everybody was expanding a lot across real estate, across other companies, we said we are not going to do it. So if you remember, we stayed in 2, 3, 4 cities for many years till we saw a huge amount of network effect building in those cities.
Okay, but at that time, would you have realized that this would become a phenomenon? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, you must have done more than 151 million in fundraise at this point of time, right?
Yes.
A founder obviously doesn't start with the money making process or raising money. Would you, I mean, what are the market reactions like? Like you said, you build a product, you leave it to the consumer to experience, right? Is it the technology that you build a narrative around? Is it the idea itself? Like you said, we don't need brokers. How was that journey in 2014, 15?
Yeah, so it was not easy. So no matter what you tell about customers, the size is still small, right? So it's all about you saying what you are seeing in the market versus versus the investor world saying what proof points they have for a large scale. So truth be told, apart from the SAF partners, first round and B next, in the first 4 or 5 years, I think nobody in India touched us. So nobody wanted to touch us earlier because a large real estate classified got funded. That's why. And then later because that same classified got imploded. So that's why. So the reason both sides worked against us. And so the initial 4 or 5 years, nobody in India wanted to deal with us. Everybody said, "Yeah, this looks like a good idea. Let it grow first." And I think in this scenario, SAP partners and BNext, and especially Teru from BNext, they helped us a lot. They believed in the vision a lot, and we basically raised money from wherever we could: Singapore, China, South Korea, 1 million here, 2 million here, wherever we could raise.
Wow.
And so the initial 5 years was about somehow surviving and being very frugal and trying to do whatever best we can. I think after 5 years, then many large investors realize that this is the platform has become big. It is showing huge amount of revenue traction and
Yes.
user traction. But we did exactly the same. So we did nothing fundamentally different in year 5 than what we did in year 1. We are just doing the same job again and again and again.
Yeah, we were talking about the core value, and the core value prop remains the same. Why should founders realize this? You're not necessarily talking pivots, right? Because now we've added several new services also, and you're in several cities now. How do you differentiate between not forgetting the core value proposition in that journey versus adding new features all the time? Most founders get confused.
So I think we are very shameless in copying or following what customers tell us. So, so we have no, I would say, compulsion to say that we come up with original ideas. We don't. We just follow what customer is saying. So we were basically, when we started, we said real estate brokerage, and because we always dealt in our common life, we deal in residential properties, so commercial never came to our mind. But when customers called and said that what about commercial properties? Why are you not doing commercial? And when enough number of phone calls came, we said, okay, let's start commercial because customers demand it. And the same roadside broker is doing small shops in commercial properties. Similarly, when the customer said that the broker does rental agreement or how do I get packer and mover, we said, okay, this is something which is a pain point and makes sense. So we started that. So I think starting with a core customer problem, and then just listening to customers every day, what they are saying, and building products and features around it. See, otherwise, the other approach is that you build those sexy tech features which the engineers love to make and which they want to put it in their resume that they have made this sexy feature, which no customer would use. So our approach has been opposite. We are just going to shamelessly listen to customer and just do what they are saying.
I like this. Let's stick to this, right? I've used your app, and obviously Purnima knows it too. And the reason is you're customer first. For example, I paid for a feature for a commercial property. I'm putting this out there because I want to share this experience as a user. The fact that your team calls me immediately and says you bought in a package that's not for you, and they refunded the money in 2 days. Mostly people who get money will not refund it for 40 days or 30 days. They'll say, okay, let's wait, let's see if we can get him onto other services. Why is that obsession with customer service fed into your company? And now because they did that, I want to come back and buy another feature. You get what I'm saying?
Correct.
Right? I want to come back and say, okay, what else can you help me with? How did that begin for you? That is very important if you're a B2C company.
So I think so. This is basically, although it is commonsensical, but many a times companies are tempted to go towards short-term revenue generation compared to long-term. So we have very strict rules. We basically say that if anybody buys any plan, we are going to see whether we are going to close the property or not, or whether we are going to help him get a property or not. And if the indicators are off, and if our platform is not reached up to that level in that city, in that locality, we refund. Because a customer experience basically means that neither will he come back, nor will he tell 5 other people to use our site. So I think that is more about foregoing short-term revenue for long-term customer happiness.
Like you said, it's not easy, right? You have to drive this into your employees. You need to have training, right? You need to have punctuality, right? You need to have constant follow-ups. Who sets up these SOPs, Amit? How tough was it in the initial days? And I'm sure a lot of pain also you would have gone through, and a lot of customers would have given you bad feedback, and that's how you reiterate and build, right?
Yeah, of course. So I think in the initial perhaps 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, I can say that to some extent I was the one driving it. But in the past 4 to 5 years, it is all done by team. So 99% is done by team. We have some 20-25 amazing people from best colleges in the country who are extremely passionate. They run each of these businesses independently. And my role is to basically only see it from a distance and only course correct and only basically pass best practices from one function to another. But otherwise, it is basically some 25 co-founders working independently. But otherwise, it is not possible to run so many sub businesses through this super app, right? Otherwise, if I try to control everything, it is impossible. So I think most of these realizations and tweaks have been done by the leaders.
Okay, Amit, and your category is very unique, and you have to tell founders if they're in the B2C market why India is a unique category. It's not like going to America and launching something because it's one market for everything, right? There, it's like a homogeneous market. The experiences of India are more about culture than the technology itself, and technology has to feed into culture. Not many people get this, that one size fits all should be, yes, overarching, but it's also cultural, right? In many ways. So your experiences in a smaller town like a Kanpur would be very different from a Mysore, for example. Right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I must admit that as a founder, when I started, I did not realize this. In my mind, it was more of MBA knowledge that there's one customer who needs this, right? You make a product, and what will our customer need? But actually, there is no a customer. Customers themselves are split into geographical preferences, their background, their budget that they have, the age that they are in, whether there's a large family or there's a young bachelor. So customers themselves are pyramidal split into different dimensions, and they have different needs. So to give very tactical examples, when we started, we used to have one paid plan for one type of service, but we realized that the bachelors want a different price point and different services, and a person who is professional and who is on the time money value curve, the time is more important to him, he needs different things, and hence the plan has to be different. So I think over time we have discovered with experience dealing with customers that culture is super important. The background with which a customer comes may be very different, and India is a low trust economy. So many people also basically have that I'm not sure whether if I pay it to a company, will it work or not? What if my money is gone? So you need to build those sub features saying that don't worry, they will refund you back, etc. So I think with those very India specific culture, very city specific, very customer specific, we have segregated. So now it's more of a la carte where you choose what you want.
I've seen that on the app, and yeah, I want to talk to you about this. The days when you. I remember you telling me before the big fundraise that happened that you're one of the few companies that has stayed quiet. Continues doing what it's doing. How tough was it to get talent for you at a time when everybody like Flipkart, Snapdeal, and every Amazon and others were sucking out talent, and a lot of the startup founders are complaining? You seem to have built a core team that believes in the value prop, right? What would you advise young founders here? Because most of them say that, hey, I can't get a good engineer to build my product, right? How did you win over your engineers, your marketing people? What were some of and you should not be very expensive at it, right? You got to be frugal, the measurements. Talk about this part of how you built this company, please.
So I think in case often people go towards the so-called best talent which is available in terms of the resume, forgetting that unless the guy is not a job hopper and he's also looking for a place where he can build something, the marriage can't happen for long. So which we have seen in many in parts of our technology team, that people basically come for a couple of years, they don't anyway come for a long intent. But the senior people in technology and almost everybody who reports to me in the business team, none of them have resigned in the past 7 years. We recruited somebody in year 1, somebody in year 3, year 5. But I would say that none of them have resigned. And the reason is the huge amount of independence that we give them, and also a sort of recruitment filter. So for example, when our Series A funding happened, we had 18 crores in the bank, but we did not take a corporate office. We basically took a house which has 3 floors.
I remember that.
Jet kitchen and which had everything. So anybody who would come for a short time will see the office and will never come back. Only people who felt that nahi yaar, ye log theek kar rahe hain, and this is something which I basically want to do, and the people seem to be good, only those stayed. And perhaps those are the people that we anyway want.
It's not easy, right, for people to stay 7 years. I mean, it shows values. And does the founder have to communicate with these leaders that you hire regularly? Is it important?
Of course. So super important to be extremely transparent and share all your worries and happiness both. Because what I've also realized is that as a leader, you are like a glittering goldfish, which is basically in there in an aquarium, and which everybody can see, every move they can see. So people are very good in reading whether you are happy, whether you are sad. So that as a leader, so many people are seeing you, you may not be seeing them. So what basically suits my personality is to be extremely transparent.
Yeah.
And then it is amazing to see as to how the team fights for those goals, which seem to be difficult.
Okay. There is this story that people said that when NoBroker started making its mark, you had people come and protest outside your office. Is that true?
Yeah.
You want to share that episode, please?
So this broker attack basically happened on the office a few years
ago. Oh, you were attacked? That I didn't know. Yeah. Okay, go on.
So basically the 50, 60 brokers came outside our office. And at that point in time, as I was telling you, we were staying in a house, sort of independent building sort of thing. house sort of thing. And we thought there's some procession, but suddenly those 50, 60 brokers stood outside our door and they wanted to. So their objective was to get inside, break computers, beat employees so that we shut down the office. They don't understand the concept of cloud. So even if the laptops are broken, we can always buy a new
Yeah,
one.
power back.
Yeah, but for them it was a thing. And so we were very shocked because this is not a Shiv Sena city, right? This is basically
Yeah.
Bangalore, which is
Yeah,
all startups in every HSR layout.
absolutely.
Other
Absolutely.
house.
How did
And
you manage? How did you manage? Was it dangerous? Were all of your founders, were the three of you in the office at the time?
so we were in the office, two of us were in the office. Actually, we were not able to manage. That is the truth. The only thing which our team was able to manage was to hold on to them because we had an iron grill door. So we made sure that they don't enter. We also called police. But finally, police took us to the police station, not them.
Why was that? What is the reason?
See, local brokers are much more pally with
Powerful.
local police
Yeah,
than us.
yeah, they have a lobby. Yes.
Yeah, and we don't even know Kannada, so that also works to our disadvantage.
How did you
And
manage to get out of it?
so actually, we were not able to because they started following our female employees to their houses at the end of the
That's
shift. They
dangerous.
started damaging the motorcycles which are parked outside the office. So finally, we had to vacate the office almost overnight. And even when we were vacating the office, they chased the vehicle which was carrying the goods as to find out as to where we are going. So almost overnight, we basically closed the office. Of course, our customer helplines went down. We posted the message on the internet, and we basically shifted into two temporary offices, which were, of course, very bad because they were neither equipped with internet nor with chairs, and hence huge amount of disruption in terms of the business. But surprisingly, what happened was at that point in time, that huge amount of customers came out in our support. Otherwise, see what happens is Indian customers, once they're happy, they just are quiet.
Yeah.
Unhappy customers make a lot of noise and write on 10 social media places, but happy customers just keep quiet. But this was an occasion when a lot of customers support poured into us, their connections with police, their connections with administration, and I think that helped us. So yeah, it was a tough time, but
You got out of it safe. So
did it
the
bring us together?
so
Yes.
the police settled the case, or what was it? I mean,
So we
what
were
happened?
advised. So we were advised not to file a case, we did not.
Okay, very good. I mean, actually, if you look at it, India itself, don't you think, has changed a lot over the last 5 years? Like you said, 5 years ago, a lot of companies were disrupting, using the cloud. They were disrupting a lot of traditional model. And it's not as if you're not inclusive of society. You were just saying that, you know, uh, perhaps a broker can help a customer list on your website, right? It could be different, right? Perhaps they could become different types of service, right? I mean, I think inclusivity was always part of No Broker. They just
So
came and said, let's become more transparent. That is your platform.
no, you are right. So, but as of now, we don't allow brokers to post properties
Okay.
online. So right now, the algorithm ensures that not a single
Okay.
broker can enter into. But
Okay.
from a conceptual perspective, are we against brokers? No, we are not. We are only
Yeah.
against a high amount of brokerage. So tomorrow, magically, if there is a set of brokers who say that I am going to give good customer service and I am going to charge a reasonable fees, we are okay to work with them. So it has never been about against brokers, because the truth is that in with many of the customers, there are brokers who have worked with them for years and decades and whom they trust and who are really care about their clients. And there is no way in which no broker can ever take that business. So
Got it.
whichever broker is working well for their customer, they will always have business. Only those brokers who are there for quick buck and who doesn't want to think well of the client, only those customers will come to us. So there is no conceptual problem with brokers. And tomorrow, if there is a theoretical opportunity to work with brokers, we will. As of now, we
Okay.
don't.
Okay, got it. How is the customer evolving? What has changed about India from 2014 to 2021? I see a leap taken in India in terms of usage, right? Especially in cities like Bangalore. The usage of technology is phenomenally high. And the use of Google Pay, or I mean, let's say UPI in this case, obviously Google Pay is on UPI, right? Lot of it has changed. Customers are more discerning. Customers read reviews. Customers are happy to give feedback and make noise where they have to. What, according to you, is the single most biggest change that's happened between the last 7 years, and where do you see the next 4 years emerge?
So I think two things which have happened is, which you have rightly pointed out. One is I think what you missed was Geo.
Geo,
Geo's
yes.
entry has also basically made sure that a lot of customers come to internet fold. So one is the entry of Geo, which has an entry of many other startups which have made customers try more products and services which are done by startup. One is that, and second is the ability or the tendency of customers to become more discerning and more demanding is something which is amazing and which will keep on challenging every company which is out there. So things which customers were okay to bear in 2014, now they hate it, and now the demand is different. So whatever image we had about a customer needs to be constantly updated because
Absolutely.
the customer is demanding more and more, is basically asking for more and more. So yeah, so that's a constant basically journey.
That'll remain constant for the next few years. You're happy with the current set of services and products that you've added. The pricing, you have 3 plans. Will that continue? Will you add more plans? Where the customer today? I mean, I'm looking at somebody who's using real estate after the pandemic. Let's talk about the pandemic and how you've added more products. There's more of an opportunity. A lot of the real estate guys tell me because of the pandemic, a lot of people started saying, "Oh, we got to own a home, right? Or we got to get ourselves a home where we can work peacefully, right?" What are some of the details or data points that you can share with me on how Corona impacted your business, and because of that, it added value to your business also?
So I think one thing which has happened is in terms of the product and the way in which we offer. So we never used to have video shoots of the property. The owner himself can take a video. That started happening in COVID because many customers couldn't visit and they wanted a good video because apartment building, so they know the broad things apart from that. So one is this, things like that has basically happened. Second is the buy and sell. So this is something which I'm also amazed at. When COVID started, I thought to myself that this sector is gone. Now, anyway, GST demon has happened. Now this Corona has also come,
Yeah,
and the buy and sell will just go down the drain. But the opposite has happened in the past 1 year. Not only more affordable properties have been sold, but many of my friends who are part of builder teams and who are running premium projects, villas are sold, completely
yes,
sold. So last 1 year, thankfully, because the middle and upper middle class did not lose jobs, the lower income group, it was very difficult. But
correct.
because the middle class did not lose jobs, and hence the income was invested, and the I think the prices of properties have also really hit rock bottom, and difficult to basically go below it. So
Correct.
that is something which has happened in this pandemic.
Did the owners come to you and start listing properties saying that, okay, we'd want our real estate to be sold? A lot of people own 5, 6 apartments. I mean, a lot of joint development products out there. Were they able to churn their product to no broker?
Yes, yes. So we have seen maximum amount of properties being sold in the past 1 year, much more than what it was previous to COVID. So not only the owners came and they offloaded their properties, enough number of buyers came who wanted to buy. Yes, we don't see that irrational exuberance of investors coming. Thankfully, not till now. Genuine customers wanting to live in properties, those have increased, and people selling those properties. Right spot.
Okay, and you also did something for housing societies, right? You had a product for them
No
also, if you
brokerhood.
want to talk. Yeah, how did that come about? Was that an experiment that you want to continue with? Is it become a product by itself today?
Yeah, so no brokerhood has now become extremely large. It has become a super app, which basically, so when we started, it was more of a visitor management and
Yeah,
financial module for management for apartment societies, competing with companies like Apartment or Apna Complex. But
correct.
now we are more than 25 lakh flats we have signed, almost 8 to 10,000 societies that we have signed, huge number of implementation, huge traction, lakhs of customer using it day in and day out. So no broker being a platform which people use it once in a year or once in 2 years has now transformed to no brokerhood, which people use 4 or 5 times in a day. And now in the super app, we have everything. So basically you can do commerce, you can sell things to your own, you can make a cake and you can sell it to people in your society. You can buy brands which are local brands and at a very good price, and they will deliver you. So a lot of commerce is happening, a lot of financial services activities are happening. So that's a huge investment that we have done, and working
It's
out.
interesting. So you're building it on your own. This is the commerce part also, you're building it on your own, the
Yes.
partnerships and the tie-ups. That means, are you going to enable the local shops, departmental stores around the community to plug into the Hood app and then service the customer. Is that what you're doing?
Absolutely. So either you want to sell mangoes, you want to sell honey, you want to sell coffee, you want to sell some some physical products, everything, or you have a theater, you want to sell a theater ticket, everything which is local and which is not there on say on a Amazon or a Flipkart, but which needs discoverability. So basically, the brands which need to reach to your house and do not have the distribution muscle are but have a good quality product are being curated by us and being provided to the apartments.
Amit, that's phenomenal, right? I mean, you talk about these communities that are what 6,000 apartments, 600 to 6,000, huge community, right? And each of them is like a township by itself, right? It's self-contained. Why didn't this happen in the past? What was the difficulty? Was it technology the problem? Was the integration and the fulfillment of the product, was that the problem in terms of commerce?
I think it was being done to some level, but that sort of customer obsession that, okay, I am just going to focus on this. So we bought a company called Society Connect because we felt that the financial model that we have is not that strong. So basically making a product, investing in it, nobody had given it full attention. I think it was done being half-hearted at some small level, but being able to do it at a very large scale with an objective of making it very big, putting huge investments, putting great people to work on the app, asking customers for small features, and then including them. For example, we have a walkie-talkie feature. So basically, two security guards can use that same phone like a walkie-talkie. They can patrol, and there are points where they can basically scan, and so you know in the night whether they are patrolling the entire society or not. So many innovative features. And in pandemic, basically instead of biometric face recognition for attendance of the staff, many innovative features, I think.
You know, Amit, you cannot be lazy because you think you have the customer journey figured out. All of us think we have the customer journey figured out. Do you think you have a case for a tech R&D team that looks at customer behavior all the time and you try out new products just when you think, hey, this is not a category, there is a category. Like commerce, nobody thought it would have been a category within apartments. Everybody thought they'd still go to an Amazon or Flipkart, but your neighborhoods could plug into the Hood app and basically deliver. That is far more powerful because the connect to the local store is far more, right? What about the R&D for you? What is a new product? Are you guys constantly testing new things? Like you said, it cannot be an engineering run thing, but it has to be a business run. Does that happen constantly? Are you at any given point of time, are you trying at least 4 new products, or how does that work in a year for you?
Yeah, so I think what it works is that our engineering team and us, because we are also customers, we are also buying, selling, renting properties, living in apartment societies. So we as a customer see a lot of ideas which we basically try and experiment. And the objective is to launch something at a smaller scale, see if it is working, and then scale it up, or just forget about it. And then our teams listening to customers every day. As I said earlier, that we are shamelessly listening to customers and seeing whether there's enough demand for a particular feature coming from various areas. And of course, commerce was not something which was asked by the customers, but which is something which we felt. So we started with a home chef category in which we said that you can basically sell something in your society, whether it's a cake or whether it's something else. So we started with that. We saw a huge amount of traction. Then we launched something which was more on the lines of you can buy and sell things within a society, some sofa or some chair or some and so on and so forth. So that thing also worked really well. Then of course now No Broker Hood is integrated with No Broker. You can buy and sell houses, you can post properties, you can use home services. So it basically grew from there. But I think dipping our feet with some customer insight and then building on it.
Okay. There's something that I want to talk to you about. We are living in a generation of, giving back to the environment. A lot of people are buying electric vehicles. This is told to me by somebody, so I'm throwing it out to you, and I don't know how your answer would be. Somebody bought, an electric vehicle from the Tatas. A couple of them, they're friends, so they bought 2 Tatas. But the society didn't allow them to set up a electric vehicle charger because of the common area, because it takes up space, right? And it's an opportunity for you people to say that, okay, we'll provide you charging services somewhere. I'm thinking out aloud, right? Is it possible?
So this type of demand hasn't come to us enough because my impression was that this sounds very stupid, by the way. And
they won't let them charge their vehicles. Can you believe that?
That's very odd because nowadays I see even kids of apartment societies being so environmentally aware,
Yes.
guiding us adults whether we should waste water in Holi, or whether we should use more environment friendly crackers in Diwali.
Yes.
It's very surprising that in today's age, when people are so environment focused, then some society did it. I'm sure with more companies coming into electric vehicles, this will change, because society will make you change. But we will, of course, if there is a demand which comes for it, and if there's anything that we can do, we'll surely do. We had done a boom barrier sort of thing, in which
Okay.
the car, there's a sticker on the car, and which is a RFID sticker, and the moment the car comes to the boom barrier, the car belongs to the society, then the boom barrier
Yes.
automatically opens up. So that thing we did, which was a physical asset, and we partnered with some other company. So we are happy to
Okay.
do with anything in which basically improves the environment if the demand is there, of course.
So this is interesting. So for you, anything would be saying that, okay, so given society 600 people, there'll be at least two cars. There'll be at least 1,000 cars in an apartment,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right. If there's 600 houses. So I'm wondering that for you today, it's about saying, okay, looking into the future, what works? Like you said, the boom barriers work best because there are cars have to come in, cars have to go out, right? There is a need for security management also. But in electric vehicles, you're saying that it makes sense to you once it reaches a potential scale, say 10% of the total vehicles. Is that something that you would recommend electric? Because a lot of electric vehicle companies reach out to me saying, I want to work with this community. But then the communities say that, no, we have to take permission from the society, you know?
So no,
So,
of
yeah.
course. So we need to research more into what exactly the resident need. But anything which people require, anything in which we can make the life of the society also easier. If
Yes.
they don't want to invest into something, then instead of a capex model, we can offer a opex model with the help of partner, in which the funds are taken over a period of time. So
Okay.
anything to help the society.
What about the solar guys? Have they reached out to you guys too?
Yeah.
Rooftop
So in
solar is
many,
huge.
yes, you are right. Absolutely right. So in many of these societies, we have installed solar panels, and solar is something which surprisingly, which many societies are now very aware about and very proactive about. So that we have seen very good traction on solar. Yes.
Okay. A lot of these societies that you work with through Hood, do they look at, see, for the thing about societies is that people lack transparency. Is there a way technology can bring transparency here, make it inclusive with all the community stakeholders?
You said announcements?
Transparency in terms of making announcements in terms of money, the way the money is spent in a society. Can you make it more transparent through the Hood app?
No, no, of course. And that is the power of technology.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what happens is that when there are meeting, a physical meeting is called for the society, barely 20% of people show up, rest do not. But when you put it on an app in which there is a polling feature, in which you can exactly ask and tabulate how many people are in favor of which particular change in the society. Anything which has to do with the transparency of financials is a very acute need, because that's a cause of trouble and acrimony in many societies, management societies nowadays. So which is the great power of technology? You can publish it there, you can put it for a poll, you can invite for comments very fast, with exact accountability, with the exact number. Huge possibilities.
Great. I mean, this is something like I'm saying, when you look at a category like real estate, you think it's a boring category, but it's not. There's so many things happening. The industry itself is transforming, right? And in terms of investments pertaining to you, pertaining to the industry around you, do you see real estate bouncing back? Because the last 10 years have been bad for the builders. For the consumers, it's been good. Do you think it's going to change over time? What is going to change? I mean, is it more money coming in? I know Blackstone and there's one more PE company. I forget its name. It'll come back to me. But they have done quite a few deals with Prestige and RMC, right? Do you see things happening more? There's going to be more action soon.
Yeah, I think there's going to be more action now, specifically that as we are we are getting better in terms of corona receding, and hopefully even if the third wave comes, the intensity will be hopefully lower. So I think there's a huge opportunity which lies in commercial properties now. That as soon as things basically improve, there will be sudden spike in terms of the demand of commercial properties, because even in Karnataka, the government has said that they want to open up schools from 23rd of August, at least 11th, 12th class, and so on. So I think if there are any green shoots here, the economy is going to open up very quickly, very faster. Builders have seen very good time in the past 1 year because of a lot of sale. Commercial properties are going to see a huge uptick. So I think from a very bottomish scenario, which was there perhaps post Demon, now things are looking very good.
Okay, great. So, guys, if you're watching this, sign up with No Broker. It's about time you dealt with life yourself. I mean, without the broker, it's easier. Just check it out, just like I did. So, Amit, I mean, what's your? I can't let you go without asking the final two questions, which will be: what would your 30-second guide to happiness be, and what books are you reading, and what would you recommend to us?
The book which I will recommend to everybody is a book called The Reluctant Billionaire. And The Reluctant Billionaire is a book which is about Dilip Sangvi. We often praise and read a lot of books about entrepreneurs which are overseas entrepreneurs, but this is an entrepreneur who was from a commerce background, did not have enough money, and then started and creating one of the largest pharma companies, which is a very scientific and very cutthroat field. A very lucid book, very easy to read, and very inspiring. And the formula for happiness is to don't think too much about past and be as rational as you can. And I think I love interacting with people, with family, with friends, with colleagues. That gives me a lot of happiness. So whenever I'm down, I talk to people, which is my happiness mantra.
That's phenomenal. So you're saying failures are okay. Don't think about the past. Just move ahead.
Yes, exactly. Because I think as an entrepreneur, the key lesson which I've learned is there is no time for self-pity, for wallowing in sadness about what has happened. What has happened has happened. Now, whatever is the most rational thing, move towards that. That is the only way out.
Did you ever get into a situation where you were running out of money for a startup and you were questioning yourself? Did these things ever play in your mind, or did you plan yourself in a way not to be in that situation?
No, you will always end up in that situation, no matter how much you plan.
Okay. How did you handle it?
So, as an entrepreneur, I am telling you also that no matter
Please.
how much you plan, there is always a risk of ending into that situation. So, of course, we have planned. Of course, our nature is to be very frugal, so we continue to do that. But of course, there will be going to be situations where it is going to be tight. And as I said, the only thing is perseverance, trying to be more rational, because on those instances, actually, you are alone. Apart from your co-founders, there is no one else to help you. You need to then take help of your spouse and your co-founders, and just think most rationally.
There you go. That's an amazing point. And, I'm started up. So thank you for telling me this. I'm going to keep this in mind that I'm going to run out of money no matter what, but I got to plan and be frugal. That's amazing insight. Guys, read The Reluctant Billionaire. Obviously, that's a book recommended by Amit. It's about an Indian entrepreneur. It's not about Silicon Valley. Don't be fascinated with Silicon Valley. Build for India, because that's where the market is if you're a B2C company. And by the way, this is theupstreamlife.com. You can just watch this podcast on the website, or you can listen to it on Spotify. The channel is called upstream.life. This is Amit Kumar, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO and co-founder of No Broker. Thank you so much, Amit, and I wish to have you soon for another discussion.
Thank you, Sean.